inside the country's housing crisis as more than 1 million people wait for social housing.
The cost of living in the UK is rising.
Experts in Britain are warning that a generation of young people may never be able to own their own homes.
The UK, once a towering giant in the global economy, now faces daunting economic challenges. The powers are striking. Household costs have surged by 25% over the past decade, while wage growth has stagnated, barely keeping pace with inflation. Additionally, Brexit's impact has been profound, with trade barriers leading to an estimated 3% reduction in GDP. These issues have created a perfect storm, making everyday life increasingly difficult for many Britons. So, what exactly led Britain to find itself like this despite being a former global economic powerhouse? Let's discover it below. Do you realize everything now seems to be going up in cost? Inflation rates in the UK have recently surpassed levels not seen in many years, hence leading to a cost of living crisis. Food, energy, and housing, which are basic needs, have become too expensive for most individuals. The Consumer Price Index shows that inflation has risen over 5%, affecting family budgets drastically. There was an increase in energy prices, especially with some households having their bills doubled within the last 1 year. There were no increments on salaries as the costs went up. When adjusted for inflation, real wages have remained flat or even fallen, meaning people's purchasing power has reduced compared to people when they are earning almost the same amount of money, but could buy more with it than they can do now. This has hit home hard with families relying on food banks and finding it difficult to pay their rent or mortgages. So, what's behind the crisis? Affecting global supply chains, increasing fuel prices along with economic policies has resulted in a perfect storm. The pandemic led to disruptions in the global supply chain and resulted in shortages and higher prices for many goods. Moreover, hike on fuel costs has pushed up prices for transport and manufacturing, which affects the cost of goods and services. Economic policies and fiscal measures have also played a role in this crisis, though some attempts to control inflation has been somewhat successful. The government's attempts to address these problems have not succeeded to any great extent. So many people want to know what will happen next. The energy price gap is one of the such actions that have been changed several times, but still, households are faced with growing bills. It seems likely that the current crisis of living standards may continue unless there is significant intervention, further driving pressure on already strained household finances. And if you think the cost of living is a challenge, wait until we dive into the housing market. Can you believe that the mean cost of a house in Britain is £250,000 right now? First-time buyers in Britain are going through critical times due to the issue of housing market. High prices resulting from scarce availability have made ownership impossible for many people. The origin of these issues lies in demand and supply imbalances. The rise in population has outpaced new construction over the years, thereby creating a serious shortage of available housing units. According to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, the UK needs approximately 300,000 new homes each year to meet her needs, but actual construction has never reached this mark. Planning permissions as well as increasing land costs contribute further to this challenge. Therefore, most people are left with no option but to rent at high fees, thus reducing their disposable income, which makes it difficult for them to save for a deposit. In fact, there has been an increase by more than 1/3 on average monthly rents in England over the past 10 years, making families spend more money renting houses. High cost of accommodation constrains other consumer spending, hence affecting individuals' lives besides impacting largely the national economic as whole. Besides, people's lack of housing leads to extra social outcomes. The millennial and the generations thereafter are having much more challenges in transitioning out of the parental roost to their next phase of life. It is a huge negative for those young people to be delayed in becoming house owners and starting their families, which can certainly have a knock-on effect on social mobility and economically. While the housing market crisis may still not be enough to spark alarm, it is coupled by the employment problem in Britain. Did you know that even though unemployment ratios remains low in the UK, the employees cannot afford salary increases? The nature of employment in Britain has moved to an increasingly insecure way, including zero-hour contracts and the gig economy. Even though such jobs have certain advantages, especially the flexibility that comes with them, there are no stability as well as certain other privileges like employee benefits. Average wage increases has been slow, and the rates have not been capable of outstripping inflation. This means the ability to sustain oneself even for full-time workers is stretched to the extreme. A report by the ONS also shows that when we compare to the present to the position a decade ago, workers' pay has been stagnated. This pay freeze has been especially evident in areas such as shops, hotels, and home care, which are traditionally amongst the worst-paid jobs. Preferably, Brexit has created some complexities, which influence jobs as well remain along the key issues. A few organizations has relocated production elsewhere while others are reluctant to make their new investments. As a result, employment opportunities are scarce. The difficulties that apparently affect many workers, especially those on low wages, include job insecurity. According to the Resolution Foundation, the employment conditions have worsened, and there is decline in the equality of jobs available affecting household balance sheets. Although wage stagnation has dire consequences to labor households, it has rippling effects on the broader economy. When wages fail to rise in parity with price levels, less money is spent on consumption, which as a result has an impact on businesses and the economy. This leads to a vicious cycle through the economic growth is slowed down and in turn affecting wages. However, employment will only be part of this picture. Then, we will identify how these economic challenges have been aggravated by Brexit. Have you asked yourself how Brexit changed the economy of Great Britain?
Brexit is and was and will be a total disaster.
Brexit is doing the economy real damage.
Brexit, as negotiated, is frankly a disaster.
Brexit has echoed greatly not only the economic, but also in the political aspect of the United Kingdom. The first loss has been experienced in the field of trade, where the current situation has interfered with the normal flow of products. Due to the new tariffs and regulations, exporting and importing of goods has become a more complicated and expensive affair. Shares of international exports and imports in the UK economy, the UK Trade Policy Observatory have on average shown that UK exports to EU have reduced by 15%, while imports have declined by 25%. Companies that presumably enjoyed efficient access to the European market are now experiencing new costs and delays. This has occasioned the interruption of supply chains and has in some way explained the increased prices that are present in the market today. Also, the Brexit factor has affected investment decisions since the outcome of projects cannot be forecasted in an environment of volatility. The Brexit policy has also led to a decline in business investments to a standstill, according to the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Brexit deployed negative consequences for the availability of human capital in some sectors where EU workers contributed significantly before. These include agriculture and healthcare. This shortage has amplified the degree of pressure corresponding to wages and working conditions that are now pushing the economy even more. Recent work shortage in the agriculture industry has been raised by the National Farmers Union, resulting in unharvested crops and higher costs. Likewise, the NHS has pinpointed staff shortages as a result of the cutoffs in registered EU physicians, nurses, and other healthcare providers. Yet, these economic concerns are not socially neutral. Now, it is time to show how these problems are unfolding in Great Britain and influence people's lives. There are severe social consequences of these problems in Britain's economy. They are contributed to this high cost of living, declining wages, and insecurities of employment which cause stress and mental health. An Office for National Statistics report indicates that individuals' anxiety and depression symptoms have increased over time and coincide with economic insecurity. Men, women, and children are using food banks more and more, with the Trussell Trust stating that the more food parcels were handed out in the 2013-2014 session than ever before in the UK. More so, the young people are on the receiving end when it comes to the most of these problems. There is also high employment, poor wages, high rents, and cost of living, leaving many unable to find decent employment or saving money to start families. The Resolution Foundation continues that the ownership has become much less common among young people in the past 2 decades, and they remain dependent on their parents much longer. This situation is quite dangerous, as the delay in such a goal will cost years of a man's life and may lead to social and economic instability in the long run. The government has put measures to respond to these challenges, for instance, the universal credit system and housing benefits, but the efficiency of these policies is still under question. Moreover, opponents state that these measures are ineffective and do not remove the source of economic injustices. At the same time, with economic support and charities to provide the needy people considerable aid and support they need, such organizations as Shelter and Citizens Advice are beneficial for those residents who face the shortage of housing and financial problems. When analyzing these social impacts, it is essential to note what could be done in order to solve these problems efficiently. What are the lessons to be learned? What needs to be done in the next stage? If other countries could learn something from Britain's plight today, it should be that these structural problems produce negative effects early and should be fixed as soon as possible. Solving the problems of cost of living, the shortage of housing, and the issues with employment all require thorough and integrated plans. Firstly, funds need to be set aside for construction of affordable houses for the low-income earners. This means that the government has to produce more homes for sale to be able to meet the demand, and thus the prices will have to stabilize and even come down in case of an increased supply. New approaches to planning regulation and construction bonuses can become the steps towards their adoption in this regard. Secondly, changing the employment laws in order to ensure that citizens working under different employers get adequate wages and job security is very important. This encompasses ending the culture of precarious work like zero-hour contracts and guaranteeing wages inflation rates. Therefore, policies that safeguard ways for workers, give steady jobs, and protect their rights do assist in raising the standard of living. Firstly, establishing economic sustainability after Brexit is important. This involves establishing a suitable climate that allows the business and titles to come and expand, and this can be facilitated by proper and stable policies. Neither has leaving the European Union and Brexit exacerbated the sterling volatility as long as international trade barriers are lowered and/or good working trade relations are pursued with other countries. Furthermore, the problems of mental health or the lack of inactivities to eliminate social inequality must also be concerning. Support for mental health services as well as equitable policies for the society all go long ways in making a healthier and more productive society. It thus remains a fundamental feature of long-term economic stability that every citizen should be provided for in the terms of his or her inherent potential. Thus, Britain's economy in the future will only depend on how key decision makers will come up with the best solutions to the future problems and challenges that are bound to prevail. Thus, there is the probability to avoid these problems and create a stronger economy using the lesson of previous failures and future prognosis. We've covered the rising cost of living, housing market challenges, employment issues, and the impact of Brexit on Britain's economy. What do you think is the most significant challenge? Is it the cost of living or the housing crisis? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content on global economic issues.